Alright, what is going on, everybody? This is Trudger MC, and I figured that since we recently looked at the modern look for Jessica Priest, we might as well look at the look that started it all, which is also the first of the classic Spawn figures that I got. So I figured it would be fun to do a comparison here if we look at the new figures versus the old figures and actually really see how these two stack up. So if you are curious about either one of these, I do have a review of both of them, so you can definitely check those out if you are interested to get a full analysis of what each of these are like. But I figure we will stack these two up against each other into the 5A categories. And if you're not familiar, there are 5 things that I think are important for action figures. And those are, in no particular order: aesthetic, articulation, accessories, addition, and action. Okay, and we're going to be going over those. So first off, articulation. I feel like that's a pretty important point. These are action figures after all, and I feel like out of these two, there's one obvious answer. This one has a ton of articulation. This one has very limited and very dated articulation and is actually pre-posed in certain respects. Like for this one, there's no torso joint, there's no knee joint, and yeah, there's not even a joint at the elbow. It's just a swivel. So I feel like the articulation here, that is a point for the new one. I don't even think I have to explain why. So there's that. So that one's pretty easy and out of the way. But then with the other 4, I feel like it is a little bit more interesting here. So let's take a look at the aesthetic first. And I think for the aesthetic, it really depends because, this definitely looks accurate to how she Spawn or Jessica Priest looks in the comics now. But this, on the other hand, looks very accurate to how she looked in her first appearance in the 1997 movie. So I feel like it really depends on, which look you prefer. But I would say, if I had to choose, which one had a better aesthetic, I would say the classic one. Because you do have some extra details, almost like this chainmail type pattern on the chest and on the shoulders that's actually sculpted, that's not just paint. And then you also have, wrinkles in the pants here to make it seem like it's real, leather or whatever that's supposed to be. They have some wrinkles in the gloves, and you have kind of this sweater type pattern right there on the chest, and you got some crinkles with the boots there. It makes it look like they're real leather, and there's kind of some volume and some definition with her hair, and so I feel like the aesthetic would go to this one. That's not mentioning all of the details with the equipment and all of that. So as good as this is, I feel like this is just a good modern look, and there are some details with the jacket and whatnot, but I feel like this one has more involved of a look to it. So I feel like, that's 1 point for the aesthetic for the older figure. And then as far as accessories go, I feel like this one is really a toss-up. Because with the newer one, it was just one figure that came in this massive box, but she came with this massive gun and then a ton of other accessories, some of which I've given to some other figures, but then you have other things here that I'm still not sure where I am going to put these with certain figures. And so, she came with a ton of weapons, but at the same time, it wasn't like this one, didn't have anything. And so I feel like when it comes to the accessories with her, she comes with 2 guns. She has this gun here, and then she also has this one, which ties into a play feature. But then there's also this thing, which can serve as a backpack, but it can also be its own turret type thing. And you can check out the review of that to know more about that. But yeah, so basically they both have a decent amount of accessories here, but I feel like looking at accessories, one of the reasons why accessories are my favorite thing to come with an action figure is because there's the chance that you get an accessory for a figure that works for more than just the one figure. With this Jessica Priest figure, you kind of have this little backpack turret thing in this gun, which could go to somebody else, but it's somebody specific to this scale and more or less this McFarlane line. Whereas with the She-Spawn figure, you have weapons like these, which really these could work with, you know, a McFarlane Spawn figure or a McFarlane DC figure, or even like a NECA or a Marvel Select figure, because they're also in the 1/10th scale. And so I feel like you have a lot more options with all of the accessories, and technically in terms of quantity, the She-Spawn one had more, even though there's more going on with this older figure. I feel like, you know, like the accessories are just better for a collection with the newer ones. The newer one gets a point, as I point to her with one of her accessories. So there you go. And then conversely, another thing that's important with action figures is action. And what I mean by that is basically play features. And the newer one doesn't have any play features. I mean, you can pose her and you can give her weapons, and that's it. Whereas with this one, you actually have a really cool action figure. Well, technically you have two action features. So you can fill this up with water, and then you can, like, you know, squeeze this, and then it has water that shoots out of this little nozzle down here. So you have that. But then you have this entirely other feature of this detaching from her back and then turning into a turret that has a working missile, a spring-loaded missile that just comes out. So you have, you know, basically this whole setup and this whole story that you can put together just with this one figure alone. And so I feel like in terms of action, it obviously goes to this one, because this one has two play features, whereas this one technically doesn't have any. So, and if you're keeping track, then that means that there are 2 points each. So this one has better accessories and articulation. This one has a better aesthetic and action. So then there's one final category, and that's addition. And if you're not familiar with what I mean by addition, basically what I mean is, you know, which figure would look better with other figures, you know, whether it be similar scale or, like, you know, if you're just putting a shelf together and you're thinking, you know, I want an entire shelf just of action figures, you know, which one would look better with other action figures instead of just standing on its own. And so, you know, whoever would win this would be the winner of, you know, out of these two. Now, in terms of addition, I'm not going to give a clear answer here, because I feel like it really depends on your collection. Now, I have a much bigger collection of the classic Spawn figures, so I would, you know, be more inclined to say that, you know, this one gets it, but at the same time, I also have, you know, a fairly decent amount, you know, I don't have a ton of them, but I have a few of the newer Spawn figures, and this one looks really good with them. And, you know, you could even put her with some of the DC stuff, you know, if you don't collect all of the Spawn figures. So it really just depends on your shelf, your, you know, what you're trying to do with your collection. And so I would say either one of these. And so that means that either one of these could win. And that's where I'm going to leave this. So I'm going to leave this kind of open-ended of which one do you think should win? Because I feel like with, you know, certain categories like the articulation, obviously this one is better. But then in terms of action, like obviously this one's better. But then with the other ones, I feel like it really depends. So that is where I'm going to leave it. I'm going to leave it as they're both tied, and whatever collection you're trying to build, either one of these would suit you better. So that's where I'm going to leave it, but I want to know what you think of this. I did call this a discussion after all. And so let's discuss, you know, what do you think? Do you prefer this one, or do you like this one better? Would you say that, you know, like this one just overall is a better value than this one, or would you say, you know, the other way around? I am very curious to know what you think. And so that's where I'm going to leave it. If you enjoyed this kind of stuff, or you agree with me, or, you know, whatever it might be, if you like this figure, or you like both of them like me, then do be sure to leave a like. You can definitely let me know in the comments what you think, which one you would have win out of these two Jessicas. Yeah, so if you want to see more content like this, you can definitely subscribe. Stay tuned for that. I do intend to continue more of these, because after all, this is she spawn, and there is a she spawn that we have yet to compare, so stay tuned for that if you're interested. But other than all of that, I do hope that you enjoyed, and I do hope that I'll see you all later.